Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn reads an alleged statement from a Biden staffer on what they would have done if Kamala Harris had won in 2024. You guys got to check this out.
Thank you. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm so pleased. I joined my colleague from Florida in saying it is time that we have this hearing. All across Tennessee, I hear from people every single week that say what was really going on in the White House and why would no one say anything when with your very own eyes you could look at any of the footage and see what was transpiring with President Biden. And I think the fact that many of his own cabinet members knew that he was not fit to serve and that there was a cabal behind the curtain who was making all the decisions. It is so offensive to the American people. And it's not something that is a partisan issue. As I talk with Democrats, many of them have lost faith in what they thought was going to be a very moderate Joe Biden administration, and it turned into be the far left Bernie Sanders version of the Democrat Party that was using the auto pen and making decisions and committing our great nation to policies that the American people did not support and would never have supported. And I fully believe that because of that overreach and that flippant attitude that much of his staff had toward the policies of this nation, to people in the administration that chuckled about tossing gold bars off the Titanic. They knew they were going down. They knew they were going to be found out. And they probably knew at some point there would be a hearing like today, and the other side of the dais would be completely empty because no one can defend what they did. Mr. Wold, I want to come to you for a moment and talk about something that was really a disturbing revelation from the Thompson book. And you know, this is part of the thing. Now we're finding out the media was all a part of the joke. They were part of the ruse. They were part of the fraud that was pushed forward. A Biden staffer told the authors that Biden just had to win and then he could disappear for 4 years. That's all they needed to do. And, you know, it is, the following statement was he'd only have to show proof of life every once in a while. And as I had a Tennessean say to me, when they had actually downloaded this book and read it, and then they said, you know, how stupid do they think we are? And the disrespect this administration showed to the American people. Why is it that the American people appreciate that President Trump goes out and nearly every day is taking questions and answering questions? Is because they have now found out that these staffers were willing to do undemocratic things, as using their term, to keep the president in office, to keep Biden there. They were willing to do undemocratic things, unlawful things. So, Mr. Wold, let's talk about that behavior and how that undermines the faith of Tennesseans and all Americans in our public institutions, because they could see what was happening, but they were being lied to by people in the White House who were probably then running in their office and saying, well, we pulled it off another day.
Yeah, Senator, I mean, this is a theme you've talked about for many years, which is the executive branch is enormous. I mean, there are close to 1,000 employees in the executive office of the president. There are nearly 4 million full-time federal employees throughout the 14 departments that the president oversees. Executive power as accountable to the people of this country really manifests in two ways. The power of the president to remove bureaucrats and to fire them, and to affix his signature to official actions that he undertakes. And so when the Washington establishment says something to the effect of, well, democracy dies in darkness, yes, it does when there are staffers, the media, cabinet officials, senior advisors to the president who all create a covering sort of shroud of darkness that obscures who is actually making the decisions. And one other thing I'll just say very quickly, a number of your colleagues on the Democrat side have said, well, there's an OLC opinion here. We don't need to talk anymore. There's an OLC opinion. It says you can use the auto pen. The opening paragraph of that OLC opinion says you can use the auto pen, but only when the president directs that you do so under his decision-making power, right? It is very clear again and again that the president actually has to make the decision. That cannot be delegated to a staffer or an advisor. And there's no indication here that anyone other than staff were making these decisions.
I really like what Marsha Blackburn said there, because Donald Trump really is doing everything in polar contrast to what Joe Biden did. Joe Biden hid in the shadows. He wasn't seen from the media for weeks on end. He was going on vacation all the time. And even when he was giving interviews and he was talking to the press, they were questions he knew in advance and he only answered like 2 or 3 of them. Donald Trump is out here fielding any question that the media can ever think of imagining, and they're just throwing it at him, and he's just answering without a script. That's who the man is. He wants this administration to be able to speak for itself. If you have a question, no matter how ridiculous it is, Donald Trump will listen and he will respond to it. Whereas the American people under Joe Biden kind of just had to take what we were given, even though he wasn't even the one calling the shots, if you ask me. And to take it even further, there are many people in this world, myself included, who are not even 100% confident in the 2020 elections. But I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I just want to say, what kind of Orwellian republic are we living in when the President of the United States doesn't have to appear and other people can sign documents on behalf of him and the American people just have to put up with it? If you ask me, the auto pen should not be allowed whatsoever, because I think the president, if he wants to sign an executive order, if he wants to sign a document, it needs to be important enough that he is willing to take the 3 seconds it takes to actually sign it. He shouldn't just delegate that to somebody else in his staff. I don't care if it takes you an hour to sign all these documents. You have to take this hour because this is affecting millions upon millions of lives. So you should have the decency to actually write it yourself. I believe the auto pen began under Obama's first administration. I could be wrong on that, but I just think it is a horrible precedent to set. Because now that ridiculousness happened under Joe Biden, people think that's normal. Now let's just say Kamala Harris had won in 2024. You don't think that her staffers would be using that auto pen on her as well? Of course they would, because once the deep state has power, they're never going to give it up. They're never going to secede that to the American people ever again. Thankfully, Trump isn't today, because the American people woke up in November and said, this is so corrupt. We just want our country back. And these people who are trying to destroy it. Well, maybe this is a controversial take, but I actually do believe that Donald Trump should abolish the auto pen. I'm not sure if his executive power can stretch that far, but I think the courts need to actually take a serious look at this, understand what happened under Biden's administration, and say, do we want something like this to ever happen again? Think about all the pardons that this man signed through the auto pen. The only pardon that he actually signed with his hand was his son, Hunter Biden. This right here is just exactly why people hate Washington, D.C., because everything is fake and fraudulent. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. Do you think that executive orders or anything signed with an auto pen should hold weight and should actually be enacted? Or do you think there should be like an investigation as to whether he actually ordered this to happen or he actually signed it? Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear that. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash that like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.